Time to pull up a chair. We've got another great story for you today in the rLounge. It's a harsh but necessary lesson. People who only show up when they need something were never really there for you in the first place. Today in the rLounge, let's share childhood trauma stories. Parents whom I supported all my life refused to help me. I cut them off, and now they're struggling. I, 33 female, have had the worst childhood. I don't remember being a child. I was always an adult, and from as early as I can remember, I was the one who held things together. I come from a not-so-affluent background. My parents worked low-paying jobs, barely making ends meet. They were always busy and tired, and so was I, shouldering their responsibilities. I remember doing household chores from as early as 6 or 7 and cooking ever since I was 10. Not only I had to take care of myself, I had to do it for my brother, who's 10 years younger than me. Because of the age difference, I was always made to believe that he was my responsibility, and I foolishly bought it all my childhood. I was his babysitter from the time he was born because my mom had to swiftly bounce back to work, and babysitter? Who could even afford that? And why would they need one when they have me? As a child, I didn't realize this stuff. I was happy supporting my parents. I saw them working hard, and that inspired me to push myself. While other kids played outside, I was babysitting Josh, cooking meals, and making sure the house didn't fall apart. If I didn't, no one else would. My mom would come home exhausted, and my dad would barely acknowledge me unless something wasn't done. It wasn't like my parents were cruel to me or something. They were loving and caring, but they didn't have the time to do things for me. They were so busy with work. By 12 or 13, I started earning. Sometimes babysitting the neighbor's kid. Sometimes mowing their lawns, cleaning their porch, walking their dogs and whatnot. At 14, I got my first job at a local diner, washing dishes. I was too young for a proper paycheck, so the owner paid me under the table. Every penny I earned went straight to my parents. Apparently, I was too young to manage the money. Funny, right? Too young to manage money, but not too young to earn one. They said they needed it for bills, for food, for family expenses. I never questioned them. I didn't know any better. Despite all this, I managed to sail through my school. I wasn't an A grader, an average one, or maybe lesser than that, barely enough to be promoted to the next grade. Honestly, when I started making money, I lost interest in studies and eventually dropped out of high school. I regret it now, but back then, it seemed to be an easy way out. My parents weren't bothered either. They were clear that they couldn't send me to college and I wasn't bright enough to get a grant. So, dropping out didn't seem so wrong. My parents didn't even care to ask the reason. They were happy that I could now put in more hours to work and bring more money home. I did that. I started working 2 jobs. Eventually, I left home, moved states, and built a decent life for myself. Got married, had kids, but still continued to send money home like a routine. I was their safety net, their retirement plan, their backup fund. I never questioned what they did with that money because they always had something lined up, like leaky roof or broken sink, damaged pipes, and so on. They never ran out of reasons. On some months, if I falter, the next month they would come up with stuff like health checkup or tooth extraction. My husband wasn't thrilled about it, but knew my parents were my responsibility. After all, they raised me, right? Then COVID happened. Like millions of others, I lost my job. I told my parents that I won't be able to send them the money. Though they didn't say anything, they seemed annoyed. Our finances crumbled with one source of income. Suddenly, we weren't doing great anymore. We had a mortgage, 2 kids, and barely any savings. Whatever I had was used up within a few months of unemployment. For the first time, I needed help. My husband was doing everything he could. I had no one to turn to. Everyone around me was struggling too, due to lost jobs or infection. Then I called my aunt, who used to work remotely for an Asian company, asking if she would help me get a job. She did share some contacts and also informed me that my parents were doing great in the pandemic. In fact, they were earning more than ever, so maybe they could shoulder some of my responsibilities. My parents had been working at a pharmaceutical company, and since their work was deemed essential, they got hazard pay and bonuses. They were making more money than they ever had before. I knew about their job, but before talking to Aunt, it didn't even occur to me that I could seek help from my parents. I was conditioned to give them and never seek. So, after a lot of hesitance, I asked my mom if she could cover me, just for a few months, until I found my footing again. She didn't even sympathize with me and started whining about their own troubles. She was like, "How much do you think we make? The bonus is helping us sail through, or we would have been in trouble since you abruptly stopped sending your share." Despite knowing about my troubles, she was still nagging about hers. At least I said, "Mom, this is the first time ever I'm asking for help. You should know that I didn't want to, but I'm forced to. So can you please consider this and wire in some money?" She bluntly replied, "Sweetie, I know, but we don't have enough. We're barely making it ourselves. It stung so badly. After years of bailing them out, they couldn't even spare a dime. I questioned her. Do you have no savings at all? Can you use that for me? I promise I'll return it ASAP. She asserted that they had no savings. Whatever they earn and I send is used up for the household expenses. I knew it wasn't true, but I wasn't in a situation to argue or take the count. I hung up annoyingly. Then, a few days later, out of desperation, I called my brother. I was in long contact with him for years, mostly because I resented how he got to be the golden child while I was the family workhorse. Mom used to say that he was doing well in his job. I thought maybe he could lend me some money. After pleasantries, I requested a small amount of a loan, which I promised to return once I had the job. He reacted very weirdly to my request. I thought he didn't want to help just my parents, so I snapped at him. Do you even remember how much I did for you as a child? Literally, I have raised you. I take care of you like a mother, and now when I need a little help, you're acting aloof. To which he clarified that he's not in a position to help. His words, I'm sorry you came to me with hopes, but I'm broke. Mom and Dad cover for me. I barely scrape by. If I had, I would have helped you. That made me pause. I asked him in detail about how long our parents have been footing his bills and what's up with his life. He informed me that he's mooching off our parents since ever. He never got a proper job. They've been paying his rent, car mortgage, and groceries. He said, I thought you knew it because a part of it came from you. I replied I had no idea about this because Mom has been lying to me. It got awkward. He requested me not to confront Mom about this. I didn't say anything. I just hung up. I'm feeling so numb now. I used to send them the money, hoping they were saving for retirement. I was happy to contribute to their secure future, but no, they were busy coddling their man-child. When Mom said they don't have any savings, I was shocked. I wondered what they did with so much money. Do they really use everything up for household expenses? Now, everything was clear. The reason my parents didn't have enough wasn't because they were struggling. It was because they were spoon-feeding their golden child with my money for years. My parents did so much for Josh. He never had to work in his childhood or even as a teenager. He never had to lift a finger in the house. Mom did it for him. They even put together some of their savings and sent him to community college, but he dropped out in between. He did some jobs here and there, but nothing to call a career. I was seething on knowing the truth. I called my parents and for the first time lashed out at them. I'm going to be homeless. I'm feeding my kids on food stamps. Do you forget I'm the one who's earning from the age of 12, and when I need your help, you choose to look away? You're happy to help your 24-year-old bum, but not bail out your daughter who always has your back? You're letting us suffer? She was shocked that I knew the truth. She tried to lie that there's some misunderstanding. I clarified that I got this information firsthand from Josh. Then she had the audacity to say, He needed our help. He was going through a rough time. You're strong. You always figure things out. I asked why she lied to me about Josh's job. She said if I knew the truth, I would have figured out that they were helping him, and I would have cut them off. I said, yes, you got that right. I'm going to cut you guys off. Right now, no more money, no more contact, nothing. Pretend I'm dead to you, and so are you to me. After a while, I got a call from Josh. He was furious that I confronted our parents about the money. He was like, I told you everything in confidence, but you blabbered about it to our parents. They are berating me for exposing them. They're threatening to cut me off all the support they had been lending. I screamed at him to stop whining about his superficial problems. He had led the best life. Everything's been served to him on the platter, while I had to struggle for every meal, every penny I earned. I yelled, They are berating you because you deserve it. Maybe some whacking would have helped you on the track. They're so unbelievable. I feel so used and manipulated. But you know what? They're right. I'm strong and I'm going to figure out a way out of this financial trouble. At the same time, I have learned my lesson in a hard way, and I'm not going to let my parents use me anymore. Sorry if I just rambled here. I needed a place to vent out. I don't want to discuss this with my husband in here. Told you your parents were using you, and stuff like that. Thanks for reading, if at all anyone read till here. Wow. A child being told they're too young to manage money, but just old enough to be a nanny. If that's not childhood trauma, I don't know what is. And then when you finally need some help, people think those thoughts and prayers will really pull through. Honestly, cutting them off wasn't just the right decision. It was long overdue. Update 1. There's an update. It's been more than 3 years since I first posted. Gladly, I'm able to turn the tables around. A few months later, my aunt helped me get a remote job, which kind of brought my finances back on track. After the market went to normal, I got my sales job back. My husband and I worked our butts off, and recently I got a promotion. we finally have stability again. So we took a family vacation, something we hadn't done in years. I guess my parents saw the photos on Facebook because suddenly they reached out, wanting to mend fences. After the last call, which I mentioned in my post, Mom and Dad tried twice to reach out to me for an explanation, but I didn't answer their calls and messages. I didn't need any explanation. I got all the clarity. Instead, I needed money, which they were showering on their son. This time, they called from an unknown number. When I picked up, it was Mom with her syrupy, sweet voice said, "We miss you. We miss the kids. We want to work this out." Without thinking twice, I asked, "Oh, really? Or do you just need something?" A pause, then, "Well, your father and I are getting older. We don't want to die with regret. Can we please get to see our grandkids? The last time we saw them, they were in a crib." She apologized and asked for an opportunity to make things right. They wanted to be part of my children's life. I was in emotional turmoil, but I didn't buy her BS. I knew her very well. If she really cared for her grandkids, she wouldn't have let them suffer. I said I didn't want to have anything to do with you folks and hung up on her. Then, a few days later, my husband told me that my father had called him, inviting us to visit home, and he said yes. I freaked out at him for accepting the invite without discussing it with me. He defended it, saying it was years since the kids had met their grandparents, so he thought it was a great idea for a short trip. He had no clue about my fallout and that I was not in touch with them all these years. It was not so difficult to hide because my relationship with my parents was always transactional. Yeah, one way. We didn't talk much. Just at the start of the month, as a routine, I transferred the money and they would reply with one word, "Thanks." He knows that my bond with my parents is not warm. I used to help them just as an obligation, which I cut off during COVID. He thought I had stopped helping them financially because of our own struggle. We, anyways, didn't see them very often prior to the blowback. I told my husband I was busy and I didn't want to visit them. He said okay. Dad called him again asking about our visit plan. My husband told him that we were busy and we wouldn't be able to make it. The next weekend we found them at our door, with gifts and candies for the kids. I had to let them in and pretend to be thrilled. When we were alone, I pulled Mom aside and asked what the heck they were doing here. She apologized, sobbing that she couldn't help me. I didn't move. I knew something was coming at the end of her apology, and bam, it did. She was worried about their retirement. I'll summarize what she whimpered. "We're getting old and weak. We can't work for long hours anymore. Time has come when we should retire, but our finances don't permit us. We're hoping you resume the money you used to send so we could save that for our retirement. After things have gotten back to normal, our hazard pay and bonuses have been cut. There are whispers of layoffs, and this time they're targeting the elderlies because we're slow. We might lose our jobs at any time. How are we going to survive without jobs and savings?" Though I didn't want to get into this, yet my curiosity got the better of me, and I asked her, "Do you have no savings at all? You both worked all your lives. I supported you for nearly 20 years. You don't even own a house. Neither did you ever lead a lavish lifestyle. Then what happened to all the money?" She had no answer. She just sat there in silence. Dad was playing with my kids on the other side of the hallway and maybe overhearing our conversation. He walked past us and dropped a bombshell. "Ask her why she squandered all of our savings on her foolish son." Then he told me the whole truth. They had liquidated a part of their savings to give a loan to Josh to start an online business. He ran it for 2 years and incurred more losses than profits. At last, he had to shut it down, but not before landing up in a nasty debt. Bank was chasing him for the money. He requested them to bail him out one last time. Dad offered to help him get a job at their factory, but apparently he didn't like the job. Didn't want to become a worker like his parents. Dad gave up on him and said they have done everything they could, and now he's on his own to deal with his crap. Despite this, God knows how he convinced Mom to take out all her savings to pay for his debts. Dad didn't know about this until recently, and he freaked out. I told him I was done being manipulated for all these years. When I was asked to work from as early as 12, then why not him? Why did you continue to provide for him? Your intention was to make me slog my butt so that Josh got a comfortable life, right? So in a way, you're responsible for his failure. I supported you for years, yet you chose your son over me. Now deal with it. I asked them to leave right away before I embarrassed them in front of my husband. They protested and wanted to sort things out, but I stood my ground that I don't want them in my life. They ultimately left, and when my husband asked me about it, I told him the truth, the whole of it, which I had been hiding for years. I cried for hours. I have never felt so light. I sacrificed my childhood and my youth to work for them, yet their hearts went for their son. It's so pathetic. My hard-earned money, my sacrifices, all for what? Nothing. Everything went to waste. Not all abuses are physical and verbal. Some are of these manipulative forms. These mental ones are very dangerous. Be careful, guys, and don't let anyone misuse your goodness. Update 2. The last one blew up unexpectedly. Here's an update. A week ago, which is almost a year and a half later, I got another call. This time it was my dad calling me in panic. They were in hot soup, going through the worst days of their life. They have been kicked out of their job, not due to layoffs, but because of their golden child. My parents didn't learn their lesson, even after he blew all of their savings to wipe his butt. They still tried to bring him to the track. If I were in his place, my parents would have written me off long back. But this was their golden egg. They fed him and sheltered him. Dad blamed Mom for all of the coddling, but I guess he's also responsible for not being firm enough in dealing with Josh. Mom's argument was, how could we let him ruin his life? We have to do something. They convinced him to join their workplace. They begged their supervisor for his job. As I mentioned, it's a pharmaceutical company, and their work was to pack and ship the drugs. Josh, the crap-headed person he is, thought this to be a shortcut for quick money, but sadly it landed him on a wanted list. Just a few months after his joining, he started stealing drugs. Not just stealing, dealing. He got caught red-handed. He was immediately fired, and when the management realized it was my parents' referral, they were kicked out too. To make matters worse, the company had pressed charges on him. The internal investigation revealed that some of the stolen stuff were prescription drugs, and they couldn't risk not reporting it to the authorities. God knows what he had done with the stolen stuff. Josh has fled. My parents are now jobless and in deep trouble. The cops are rounding them up for questioning. They have no clue about his whereabouts, but cops are not buying it. Why would they? My parents have been sheltering that troubled butt in their home, despite all his mischiefs. And now when they're in trouble, who do they call? Me. Dad pleaded with me to wire him some money so that they could hire a lawyer and free themselves from this harassment. He was like, "We really need you this time. Please, you have to help us. We've lost everything." I replied, "It's not my problem. You did not learn from your mistakes and went on to have his back. You're bound to suffer. I'm no fool like you. I don't want it to do anything with troubled people." I hung up the call telling him not to bother me again. They kept trying to reach out, but I didn't answer. I told my husband about it, and he suggested I block their numbers. It's not good to be associated with people like them. I don't want to get dragged into their mess. I spent my whole life being their crutch, but I finally realized something. The only time they reached out was when they needed me. The moment I needed them, they turned their backs. So I did the same, and I don't regret it. My parents made their choice, and now they'll deal with some consequences. I love how they didn't call to say, "We miss you," or "Sorry for emotionally scamming you for 20 years," but instead went straight for the, "Hey, we need cash, or we might go to prison." That's some peak parenting. Block them. Move on. Buy yourself something nice with the money you would have wasted on their mistakes. Maybe a vacation. Did you have similar parents growing up? We want to hear your stories. And thank you for joining us today in the rLounge. Be sure to like and subscribe and hit that notification bell so don't miss out on our next video. Until next time. And please put your chair back where you found it.